Good morning, all. Okay, so in the last lecture, we have started different cooling techniques. So in that, we have seen a natural convection. Then second one, forced air cooling. Third one, liquid cooling. In liquid cooling, again there are two types: oil immerged liquid cooling or natural cooling called, and second is a forced liquid cooling. So these are the methods that we have already seen in the last lecture. After that, a vapor phase cooling, that is, I think we have started in the last lecture, but due to time constraint, it was not completed in the last lecture. So again, I'll just repeat in short the different methods we have seen in last lecture within first 5 minutes. Then we will see the next one. So natural convection, this is majorly used in all power devices or maybe circuits where power devices are used. So natural convection, it means by simply doing some process on a heat sink. The heat sink is open to air, and normally the heat sink is vented so that the temperature handling capacity of heat sink increases. Sometimes it is plated, maybe anodized material is mounted on the heat sink so that the temperature dissipation capacity of uh, uh, heat sink increases. So that is called a natural convection. It means no other technique is used, just only some process is done on heat sink so that the capacity of a heat sink is increased. So this is called natural convection, where the heat sink fins are always open to air. So normally, if the fins are open to air, then automatically the temperature of heat sink is maintained. If the temperature of heat sink is maintained, then the junction temperature of a device is also maintained, and we can protect our device to burn out from over temperature. Okay, so that is called natural convection. Then if natural convection is not sufficient, it means that if the devices generates more heat, sometimes the heat is generated inside the device is more. So in that situation, uh, natural convection is not sufficient to handle the temperature. So the second one is natural convection is not sufficient. So in this condition, the forced air cooling is used. It means that the exhaust fans are placed on heat sink so that they can take an away heat from the heat sink fins and help for the cooling of a heat sink, right? So temperature of heat sink, if it is more, and with the help of natural convection, if it is not possible to dissipate the temperature, then air or force air cooling, in which the cooling fan is used, so to cool the heat sink. Sometimes exhaust fans are directly mounted on heat sink fins so that they can taken the hot air taken away from the heat sink and maintain the temperature of heat sink. So this is called basically a force air cooling. uh, the third one, that is liquid cooling, that also we have seen in the last lecture, but again I'll explain you. So liquid cooling, if the natural convection and even forced air cooling is not sufficient, if you are using power devices for very high temperature range, then definitely oil or liquid cooling or vapor phase cooling is preferred. So liquid cooling, in which your heat sink fins are directly deep into the liquid so that whatever temperature that is dissipated along the all fins, that is transferred from heat sink to the coolant or liquid, and then from that liquid to the tank, and then tank to the atmosphere, so that actually the area of a temperature dissipation increases, so that the temperature of heat sink is maintained. If temperature of heat sink is maintained, automatically the temperature of devices also maintained. So that is called oil emerged natural cooling. Whatever I explain you, it is a oil emerged natural cooling, in which directly the heat sink is emerged or deep into the oil, or basically called coolant, right? So heat transfer from device to heat sink and heat sink to the fins and then to the oil. From oil, it will transfer to the tank surface and then to the atmosphere, so that the area to transfer or dissipate more temperature increases, so that the overall temperature handling capacity of heat sink increases. Second one is forced liquid cooling. If this oil emerged natural cooling, if it is again not sufficient, it means if suppose device produces more heat, then forced liquid cooling technique is used. In this particular technique, liquid is flow through the fins, that is a heat sink fins. So liquid flow at some, hello, hello, hello. If anyone having any problem, you can ask me. Unmute yourself and you can ask. Okay. So force liquid cooling, the liquid flow at some velocity around the heatsink assembly. So normally the heatsink is not only deep into the liquid, but that liquid is continuously moving, right? So that what happens, the heated liquid that will open to air, and that liquid should be cooled down and again come back to the heatsink, so that the liquid is also continuously, the temperature of liquid is also maintained, so that automatically the temperature of heatsink is maintained. And as the temperature of heatsink is maintained, it means that the temperature of device also maintained. So the liquid flow at some velocity around the heatsink assembly. The liquid normally flows in a closed loop system. After passing over the heated device, the heatsink, the liquid gets hot. Then it is passes through the narrow fins of a tank. Then these fins are open to the air, so that what happens, the liquid which is passes through the heatsink fins, they will get hotted because of the hot heatsink fins. Then that liquid is open to air, so that the liquid gets cooled down, and again that liquid is sent back to the heatsink or heatsink fins. Therefore, liquid gets cooled through the fins. Then again it passes over the device. So this is actually a continuous process. Liquid cooling is more effective than uh, air force cooling or natural convection, even oil emerge cooling. This force liquid cooling is more efficient. Now the coolant or maybe a liquid that is used for this purpose is normally not a water, maybe a pure water is used. So the water with some additional content like ethylene glycol water, 60% water and 40% ethylene glycol ethylene, so that the corrosion problem with the water is avoided, right? Because this water continuously flowing through the tank to the fins, back to the tank, again fins, and so on. So the fins and tank may affected due to the water. So water, pure water is not used. In place of pure water, some other materials are given, that is shown here in front of you. So this is about the force air cooling. This is actually a, mechanism that is used in uh, sorry, force air cooling, right? So this mechanism, it means the liquid flow from one end, it will passes through the heat sink fins and then out from the other end. Then this liquid is open to air, it will cool down in a air and again back to the this particular, hello, problem, I don't know. Dear student, am I audible and screen is visible? Again, the internet problem is
Yes,
any,
sir.
okay, okay, it's all right. Because my on my screen it shows your network problem, so that's why. So this is the arrangement given for a liquid cooling. So this arrangement consists of maybe a pipe from which you can and maybe the liquid is enter into the system. It will cool down the heat sink fins and then out from the mechanism. Then the liquid is open to air, again come back to the system. So this is a diagram given for force air cooling. Next one is a vapor phase cooling. If the temperature handling capacity or temperature produced by the power devices is more, normally vapor phase cooling is used when you are using SCRs, because SCRs are used for very high power rating. So vapor phase cooling is the most effective cooling technique as compared to all these previous learned three techniques. But it is actually a costly. It has some disadvantages. Costly, the mechanism required some additional arrangement, etc. Even condenser is required. So the system is costly, but definitely it is more effective than other three methods if the temperature generated by power devices is too large. Okay, so vapor phase cooling is normally used for high power devices as the given. The heat produced by the device evaporate the liquid. So whatever heat is produced by the devices, that will evaporate the liquid. Basically the devices are deep into the liquid, so due to the heat produced by the devices, that liquid evaporates. This vapor then flows to the condenser. So whatever vapors may be generated after evaporation of a liquid due to the heated devices, that vapor then flows to the condenser. The condenser again convert vapor to the liquid, right? So temperature, whatever, again the your internet connection is unstable. I don't know, am I audible or not? Uh, so this vapor then flows to the condenser. The condenser again convert vapor to the liquid and send it to the devices. So it is very convenient method. Definitely it is costly because we require a condenser which converts vapor to the liquid, right? Remaining is as like your force cooling method. The remaining system is very similar, but the condenser is required. Then uh, coolant, basically Ferron 113 is used as a coolant because it boils at 47 degree, right? So definitely water is not used because it boils at 100 degree or any other coolant. So the specific coolant is required. Otherwise the vapors never generate if you are using the coolant having boiling point is higher than maybe the temperature of a device. So the Ferron 113 is used as a coolant because it boils at 47 degree. If it will use any other coolant, so it will maybe boil at 70, 80 or 100 degrees Celsius. So definitely your device maybe due to a heavy temperature, your devices get damaged. So in this vapor phase cooling, specifically this particular material or coolant is used so that it immediately boil at 47 degrees Celsius and generates the vapor, right? So that the temperature of that particular maybe a tank, you can say, where the heat sink fins are deep is maintained. Otherwise the temperature of tank may increases, and because of that the device may damage, right? So that is, this is most important, the coolant and condenser, that is additional required. It is chemically inert and non-toxic. That is the advantage of this particular coolant. It has a good dielectric constant. So these are the two advantages of this Ferron 113. That is a coolant used in a vapor phase cooling. So this is the arrangement of vapor phase cooling. If you see that heat sink is deep into the coolant, right? And because of that heated fins or heat sink directly deep into the coolant, the coolant that is used Ferron 113, it start to boil after 47 degrees Celsius and generates a vapor. So vapors are taken away from this particular tank, and after that it will send to the condenser, so that this vapor is converted into the liquid and again sent back to the tank from this condensed liquid. So there will be a one inlet and one outlet. Outlet, it means the vapor is taken out from this particular tank, and after that that vapor is sent to the condenser, where it will convert into the liquid and send back to the tank, right? So this is a system. If you see, this larger area is a tank in which the coolant is maybe filled, and this is actually a heat sink which is directly actually a device with heat sink directly merge emerge into the coolant, and uh, this coolant basically get heated due to this heat sink, and after 47 degrees Celsius this coolant start to boil and generates a vapor, right? So these vapors are taken away from this particular tank, sent to the condenser. The condenser mechanism is not shown in your figure, so only the output of this tank that is shown as a vapor. So this vapor is taken out from this tank, sent to the condenser, and after uh, uh, converted that into the liquid, it will send back to the tank through this condensed liquid as an inlet. So what happens? The temperature of this particular coolant is maintained at 47 degrees Celsius. That is advantageous. So your device, if it is heated, more heated, then uh, the temperature of coolant is also maintained at 47, because after 47 it starts to boil and generates a vapor. So that vapor is taken out from the tank and sent to the condenser, so that condenser convert that vapor into liquid again and sent back to the condensed liquid, so that the overall temperature of a tank is maintained to the 47 to 50 degrees Celsius, so that the temperature of heat sink is also maintained at 50 degrees Celsius. So if the 50 degrees Celsius the temperature of heat sink, it means that you can maintain the junction temperature of a device. You can maybe protect your device from any damage from the increased temperature. So this vapor phase cooling is very ideal, or maybe a useful, and having a lots of advantages. But there is a one disadvantage, that is condenser is required to convert vapor to liquid. That is one disadvantage, and a specific coolant is required, right? You cannot use any ordinary coolant in this particular system. So that specific coolant is required, and condenser. So arrangement is complicated. Definitely it is costly, but still the advantage that the temperature of your device is maintained. That is the advantages. So the advantages are given for vapor phase cooling. Heat is exchanged through flow of vapor, hence overall thermal resistance is reduced. Heat is uniformly spread or dispersed over large area, that is a condenser. The thermal resistance can be made lower than 0.075 degrees Celsius per watt, this which is very small as compared to any other. The condenser and a device can be placed at a distance from each other, hence equipment cabinet can be more compact. And disadvantage, additional condenser unit is required to condense the vapor to liquid, and overall cost of cooling system is more, because a specific coolant is also required, and the condenser is required. So these are the two disadvantages, but the advantages are more. When the question will ask in examination, you can first explain what are the cooling methods, what is basically requirements of cooling, what is the need of cooling. Then you can draw this particular diagram and then explain what is inside the diagram. So in this diagram there will be a tank in which the Ferron 113 coolant is installed, or maybe a field. Then the device with heat sink directly emerge or deep into the coolant, and the temperature or boiling temperature of this particular coolant is 47 degrees Celsius. So immediately whenever the heat sink is heated, and if the temperature of heat sink is more than 50, this particular coolant temperature increases to the 47 degrees Celsius, then it start to generate the vapor. That vapor collected from the tank and sent to the condenser, and condenser convert that vapor into the liquid, and that liquid again sent back to the tank, right? So that the temperature of this particular coolant is maintained, uh, so that automatically the temperature of heat sink also get maintained. If the temperature of heat sink is maintained, it means that you are maintaining the temperature of a junction, or you can say we protect the power device from overheating. So this is about the vapor phase cooling. Vapor phase cooling is asked, maybe question is asked on vapor phase cooling in final examination 2-3 times. Even this question is asked in SEM also. So keep in mind this particular question, or even liquid cooling. This question, maybe write a short note on liquid cooling and vapor phase cooling for 6 mark is asked in examination, that is in a final examination. So these two topics, that is force cooling and vapor phase cooling, both are important. So uh, this is the important for your final examination. Now, next one is protection of power devices from over voltage. Okay. See, till we have learned uh, the different cooling techniques, that is even heat sink, and after heat sink, we are learn 4 different cooling techniques to protect the power devices from over temperature. Right now, protect the power devices from over voltage and over current. Okay, so that the power devices are totally protected from maybe any unusual condition which damage the power devices. Okay, so voltage protection of a power devices is the next part. Now, as we know that the line voltage is continuously fluctuating, the voltage, that is line voltage, maybe sometimes 230, typical value of line voltage is 230 volt, but we know that the temperature, line voltage is continuously varying. It may be sometimes 230, 240, 260, 280 even. Sometimes the line voltage is increased up to 280. And not only this increased line voltage, fluctuation in line voltage, but sometimes due to other reasons, the high voltage spikes may appear across the power devices, and due to that, either false triggering may be performed, or sometimes your power devices get damaged. If your power device, for example, SCR, if SCR is connected in forward bias condition and any high voltage spikes it appear across the SCR, that is between anode and cathode, and if anode is positive with respect to cathode, then without the gate current, your SCR may turns on. So this condition is called as a false triggering. Okay. Second one, if the device is in reverse bias condition and the voltage, that is a high voltage spike, if appear across the SCR with anode negative with respect to cathode, then because of that high voltage spikes, your device may damage permanently. So these are the various conditions. uh, Maybe voltage spikes generates from various sources, for example lightning surge, or maybe sometimes EMI interference, etc. So that also damage your power devices, right? So we should protect our power devices from any change in a voltage or any high voltage spikes which may appear across the device, and that may damage your devices. So we should protect our devices from any power high voltage spikes or maybe a fluctuation in a voltage, right? So the following are the different methods to protect our power devices from high voltage transients, right? So first one is the snubber circuit, second reverse recovery transients, voltage protection using selenium diode, and voltage protection using metal oxide varistors. So these are the some examples, right? The protection circuits are not limited to these 4 only, but as per your syllabus, only these four protection circuits are given. So we will concentrate only on these 4 circuits. Okay. So snubber circuit, then reverse recovery, and so on. So we'll start from the snubber circuit. These protection devices are very important. If you see the question papers of last 4 end same 3 to 4 end same paper, sorry, I think 3 end same paper, and 3 in same paper, I think this is the 4th time. So definitely you will find that there will be at least one question on voltage protection, right? So question may be either asked on selenium diode, or question may be asked on snubber circuit, right? So question may be asked on crowbar circuit, and so on. So these are the very important topics from the unit number second. If you see unit number second is content wise, if you see the syllabus of unit number second is a very large, but the questions are repeatedly asked on some typical topics. So voltage protection, like previously cooling techniques, in which force air cooling or liquid cooling or vapor phase cooling, So vapor phase and liquid cooling may be asked in examination 2-3 times, and even it will be asked in your examination also. Similarly, heat sink is asked many times. Write a short note on heat sink and so on. Sometimes maybe a small problems are given on heat sink. Then maybe different protection circuits on voltage protection, current protection. So these are some typical topics on which the questions will be asked in examination. Okay. So snubber circuit is the first one. Then other circuits we will say later on. So what is a snubber circuit? If a power converter stresses a power semiconductor device beyond its rating, there are two basic ways to overcome them. The ways are either replacing the device with a large higher rating or using snubber circuit to reduce the stress to the safe level. See, these are the two methods. These are the two methods to protect your power devices. If suppose the voltage fluctuation, maybe at your home, if it is 280, 290 or 300 volt, so select the power devices which can handle the voltage fluctuation more than 350 or 400 volt. So no need to connect any protection circuits. That is the first one, but which is not a good method. And second one, to use a snubber circuit. Okay, so snubber circuit is mostly used to protect the power devices from higher voltage transients. The function of a snubber circuit is to reduce the electrical stress found on a device during switching by a power semiconductor converter to the level within an electrical rating of device. Okay, what is the meaning of this? Uh, we exactly what happens if you are using your device normally for the voltage rating of 230 volt or maybe a 300 volt, right? And if you are applying the voltage 400 or 500 volt, definitely the high voltage stress will be applied on a device. Because of that, your device maybe turns on, that is called false triggering sometimes, or sometimes due to heavy voltage that device may damage permanently, right? So normally with the help of a snubber circuit, we are simply decreasing the stress on the device. So whatever voltage, the sudden change in voltage, that is called high dV by dt, is applied on a device, that we will reduce with the help of snubber circuit, right? So normally the devices are used to handle a high voltage rating, but high rate of change of voltage, that is a high voltage spike for a very short time, if it is applied on maybe to the device, then definitely device either trigger without gate, or sometimes it may damage, right? So without gate it trigger, it means it's a false triggering. So actually we don't want to turn on the switch, but because of that high voltage spike, the device may turns on. And second one, that is if device is in reverse bias condition, then or maybe a applied reverse voltage spike, if it is negative, then your device may get damaged. So both conditions are there. So normally with the help of snubber circuit, we are simply decreasing the stress on the device. What is meaning of stress? If your device is connected in a circuit to handle 300 volt, and if you are applying 400, 500 volt, and that is with high rate of change of voltage, so definitely your device either false triggering, it turns on, or it may damage, right? So we are actually decreasing the stress on a device by connecting snubber circuit across the device. The snubber circuit normally consists of only two components. One is resistor and another is the capacitor, right? So that with the help of the resistor and capacitor, we can decrease the stress on the power devices. Okay, so see, express, it is used to reduce the switching stress to the safe level. Now limiting voltage applied to the device during switch off transients. Normally what happens when we turn on and turn off a switch, even for example at our home, if you are using a lamp, that is ordinary lamp, which is used previously at our home, now we are using CFL LED lamp or tubes, right? But the old lamp, if you turn on the lamp or turn off the lamp, many times that lamps may be damaged due to fluctuations at turn on and turn off. This may be observed by everyone at your home, right? So when we turn on the lamp or turn off the lamp, the lamps may get damaged many times. This has happened due to the switching action, right? So when you turn on or turn off the switch, that time high voltage transients or maybe a pulses are generated, and that may appear across the device or a load, and the device or load may be damaged. So limiting device current during switch on transient. When you turn on your device, that time a high current will be passed through the device. So again, the device may get damaged due to that high current. So we have to protect our device from any high current transients. Limiting the current rises di by dt flow in the device during switch on. Then limiting the rate of voltage rise. This is most important. High dv by dt across the device, right? During switch off or during reapplied forward block over voltage across the thyristor, and shaping of switching trajectory of devices as it switches on and off. So dear student, actually the transients, okay, again, it shows poor internet connection. Now, these are actually the conditions which are given, which generates the high voltage transients, and because of that, your device may damage. So we have to protect our device from any high voltage transients, right? So AC snubber circuits, RC snubber circuits is normally connected across the semiconductor device to limit the rate of change of voltage, that is high dV by dt, within the maximum allowable rating and rate of change of current, that is di by dt. So your devices are protected from these both high rate of change of voltage with respect to time. It means for a very short time, a high voltage spike may appear across the device, or high di by dt. It means for a short time, very high current spike may be applied to the device. So snubber circuit could design as a polarized, reverse polarized, and unpolarized type. There are maybe a different methods. So these are the different circuits. If you see the snubber circuit, that is the polarized circuit, reverse polarized, and unpolarized. So these are the different snubber circuits actually. Okay. So in this particular hello.
Hello, sir.
Yes, 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 yes. Okay, okay. Uh, now, am I audible? Hello.
Sir, yes, sir.
Yes, yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Uh, because of internet connection, and many times it was interrupted uh, by default with the help of my cursor. Maybe my mic may be mute. Okay. So this is the first one that is called polarize. So in which the diode is connected parallel to the T1. So this connection is called as a polarized connection. So in which this resistor R and R1, two resistors are important, and capacitor C. The terminals are open. One is connected LS, another is. So actually the supply voltage is applied between these two terminals. Okay. The terminal, actually the names are not given in a terminal, but if you see the thyristor T1, anode and cathode, so actually voltage applied to anode and cathode, and sometimes high voltage spikes when comes, then this capacitor, the current high voltage spike definitely having very high frequency, so that are directly passed to the capacitor C and this resistor R1 and R, right? So resistor R limit the forward dV by dt, that is connected